very excited about today's guest because we're talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is hair care. Anyone who knows me knows my hair is like something that I am constantly worrying about coloring, doing. And I love this brand, the Doux, because as it is described, it is a sucker free hair care line. And we all know we are all suckers for anything that's marketed to us. And that is not this hair care line. It is formulated for results and performance. And Maya Smith is here today to tell us all about the Doux. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So tell us, what is the Doux? How did you start it? Why did you start it?
Well, I've been a hairstylist since I was a kid. I got my license when I was still in high school. So I've been doing it for quite a while. And I actually started in a military community, and I was like one of the few kids of color that was even in the cosmetology school in high school, period. So I really started my journey kind of having to learn about textured hair by myself, and being pretty well versed in anyone's hair because I lived in a pretty diverse community. So what happened for me was working extensively with textured hair and kind of having to translate those rules to people who didn't do textured hair. I was still in a military community. I actually married someone that was in the Air Force. So we lived in Germany. In 2008, I moved to Germany, and I just wanted to grow wherever I'm planted. I think that's the mentality that you adopt. And so I started a natural hair salon because there weren't really any options for my clients who were in the military that wanted to transition from relaxed hair to natural hair. And they had a lot of time constraints because they were up early in the morning and needed to get, from exercising to the office really early in the morning. And then military dress requirements weren't really working for people who wanted to wear their natural curls, because there are a lot of dress and appearance guidelines that had to be followed. So I just started to work with the people that were in my community, really helping them transition from chemically treated hair to wearing their natural hair and figuring out a way that they could do both. And at the time, there were only products that either were strictly for natural hair, which were too heavy, or they were, there was another class of products that were better for blowouts and straight styles, but they didn't have the moisture that was necessary to maintain curly hair. So I started to just reach out online and try to find people who were good at formulating products for multicultural, but that would also take me seriously as a hairstylist from behind the chair and listen to my feedback and give me something that didn't exist. Just a product line that it was important to me that every single product could be used, whether you wanted to wear your natural curls or you wanted to wear your hair straight, because I was really just responding to the needs of my clients. And so it took a while, because the process of formulating products is really a trip when you're not a chemist, right? I know what I want. I can give you a list of criteria, things that are important to me and to my focus group, but you have to do the science. And so there's always this disconnect between the science community and, the artist hair care community. How do I get things that perform well, but that also are scientifically sound, sustainable, that work well for all textures? So it took us a little while to get it together, but I used the clients that I had as my focus group. And eventually we did come up with the Doux, and we actually launched it in my salon overseas. And I mean, it was a trip, because I wasn't really coming into the industry trying to be a brand. I really was just serving a need that existed at the time. So for really about 5 years, the Doux was just for myself and my clients. I had no intention of going into mass retail. I had been approached. to put products in, drugstore or in professional or retail, but I didn't really know what that would mean for my business. And I really loved doing hair. I didn't want to be in sales. I really just wanted to serve people. So after a while, it kind of, it took on its own life, if I can say that. It started to just develop, and I started to get more as the internet or Instagram started to blow up. People from all over the world were seeing us, and they were coming to the salon just, from across the country. And I started to get a lot more interest in just the way that we were approaching textured hair care. And that's when we decided, okay, maybe this is something that we can't hold on to on our own. Let's try to see what this means in a retail space.
I want to point this out to everyone who is listening. Maya is like the model female founder. There are so many things that she just said, and I'm sure there were things that you did wrong. I'm not going to say that you're perfect, and I don't know, and we'll get into that. But there are so many things that you just said that are inherently important and needed when you're starting a business. I mean, you talked about starting the journey based on your own need. And that is a lot of female founders start their companies because they need something. You talked about that you reached out to formulators, you used the internet, you asked people because you didn't know how to formulate. So instead of trying to figure it out, you went to the source.
Right.
You talked about responding to the needs of clients. Your clients were asking for something that didn't exist. So you were like, how can I make this easier for them? Then you used the clients for a focus group and you got their feedback to develop a product that ultimately was so great that mass retailers wanted to stock it. And so kudos to you.
Thank you.
Because those are just all, and I recap that because anyone who's listening needs to take note of those steps, because I think a lot of times we put the cart before the horse, we jump into things with 2 feet without doing the research. And the way that you described that process is ideal.
I hope so. I think it's important to lean into what you are the expert in. And it's important for us to know that we can't be the expert on everything. I'm the hair care expert. I knew how products should perform. I knew what I was looking for, and I knew what was important to my clients. So I just focused on that and gave the part that I'm not good at, which is science and math and all of the formulary stuff, to someone who really was focused in and locked in on that. So I really think that it's important to start when you're starting whatever your entrepreneurial journey is to really lock yourself into what you do, what your strength is, and be okay with giving the other parts of the business to people who are experts in that area.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the last thing that you said that on my list, I didn't just say, but this is important too. And why I want to say it is you said you loved doing hair and you wanted to serve people. And
That's
when you, number one, and when you show up, anyone, when I'm not saying you, Maya Smith, I'm saying when you, community listening here, when you show up wanting to serve, that feeling is translated to the people you are serving. And ultimately, your want to serve them will lead to transactions when it comes to formulating a product for their hair.
Absolutely.
Or anything, So, right?
Absolutely. It steers every single decision that we make. So if you are, financially motivated, that's going to steer all of your decisions. If you're like me and you're an artist and you're into serving people, all of my decisions are really based on the process. I get caught up in the process of creating it. And the end game for me wasn't really clear. I didn't know what would come of it. I think that's how creatives think, is we really enjoy making things and the process of developing and seeing what happens. And so I wasn't really thinking about the financial side of this, or even really the business side of it. I knew that I could make
or
money
what it could mean, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely
Like you
not.
probably didn't realize what, like you just weren't thinking about what it, not that you didn't realize, but you weren't thinking about what it could mean if you were like, oh, I have this really freaking good
Right.
product and I'm going to
Right.
give it to the masses. Like,
Absolutely. Even now, I just try to focus on creating things that are meaningful. And I pay people to worry about the finances. I pay people to project how that may work in the market. And I do listen to their feedback, but I think it's important to focus on what you're trying to create, because if you get caught in the weeds of what the outcome will be, then you kind of tend to lean into too far into the financial side or the sales side or the marketing side or your personal brand, and you lose sight of who it is that you're serving.
it's really interesting that you say that because when I sold my first company and I was all of a sudden, held accountable to a lot
Right.
of things that like and I was like you before, and I still am. I still do see things like you. Like I just showed up and served and I figured the rest would come, and that's how I built the brand and it worked. And we were bringing in 7 figures of revenue and it worked. So I wasn't like hung up on budget and this and that. And sometimes we did things that maybe were out of budget, but guess what? We made up for it somewhere else. And like,
Right.
so when
Right.
I sold my company, all of a sudden I had this like operations manager, and every event we created, she would create this spreadsheet and and everything had to fit into these boxes. And like,
Right.
I was like, that is not how this works. Life doesn't fit into a box. And
Right.
in doing that, to your point, what happened was we lost sight of who we were serving. And it showed because it was like everything was an ad because we had to make certain numbers. And like
Right.
the way that like I showed up to serve changed because I had to fit into her box, And
Yeah.
so that's when I was kind of like, oh, I don't really want to do this anymore. This isn't how I
Right.
want to do things. But so I want to ask you, so when you started when you started selling your product at your salon, did
Mhm.
you feel before it was available to the masses, did you feel like people were coming in maybe that weren't your clients just to buy the product? Like, was there an element of that, like with word of mouth, like, oh, I have this great product, you should go buy it? Like, you know what I mean?
A little bit, but it was mostly, my clients' word of mouth. And what happened for us was that the people that were in the salon that were booking appointments obviously were benefiting from the products. They were taking it home to their families. And then they had friends who couldn't, we were booked like, 2 months in advance. So they had friends who couldn't come in, but that had kids or that had husbands that needed good hair products. So it did kind of what the brand or putting the products in the salon did for us was it made our philosophy accessible to people who couldn't sit behind the chair. And that's when my wheels got to turning, like, okay, so I can only take so many clients. I can only, help so many people, but we think about hair care differently. And that's really the reason why the products were different. So let's experiment of let's see if we can still help people get the results that they're looking for outside of the salon environment.
Did you sell them direct to consumer on your own before you went into the masses?
I did, and it was a different world. Instagram and Facebook was not ad based.
Oh my God,
So
I know.
we sold in the salon and it was great. And the first week we launched our product, the first one was Bonita Afro Bomb. And it was like, I think we sold like maybe 20. It was crazy. It was like
But like, were people
cricket.
calling you or trying to buy them online? Like, did you have that element
Yeah.
of okay, of e-commerce?
Once
That's
we
what I
launched, it was okay. But the first week, like nothing happened. We had a real naive idea of, when you build a website and you tell people that it's there, you still have to do a lot. If they've never sat behind your chair, if they've never been in your chair, you don't know, they don't necessarily understand the value. So yeah, it was an experience. Like the first week was crazy. And then once people knew that we were serious, that we had that we did have inventory and that real people were using this and it wasn't just something cute on the web, then it took off. But at first I almost quit. I mean, my salon was fine. People that knew
yeah.
me was fine, but it's really difficult to translate your passion for whatever it is that you're doing, no matter what you're doing, on a package. You have to be present, you have to be engaged, you have to speak to and fellowship with the people who you want to serve. And I didn't understand that the first week we launched.
So when did you start selling at mass retail, and how did that play out?
It was about 5 years after we launched the Doux. I said, no, no, no. We had been approached by a lot of distributors and some brokers, and I just didn't, I didn't like the way that I felt with, number one, the fact that you really are in sales when you go into consumer packaged goods. It's not the same thing as hair care. People,
Yep.
the numbers are all that really matter. And I also knew the way that products in my category were being marketed were based on a lot of botanical stories and a lot of flowery marketing that, from my perspective, according to my training, had nothing to do with the science of how hair care really worked. So I was really afraid of coming in and making a bunch of claims that I couldn't substantiate, or being kind of forced to do this dance, this marketing dance that is really prominent in this category. And it made me feel icky, because these aren't the things that I was saying to real people. So finally, when I started to see that there were people that were listening, that my clients were getting really good results, and I couldn't serve everyone personally, that's when I decided, okay, let's go ahead and say yes this last time, and just see where it will take us. So I had to scale really fast. I had to make sure that the people that formulated my products could mass produce it. And we launched, like, within a year of the yes, things started to move really, really fast. We launched like Christmas Day in Target.
I was going to say, who did you say yes
Yeah.
to first?
Yeah, so we launched in Target first. And by then we had, a good 100,000 followers. People were really engaged, but we all know now that following doesn't necessarily translate into sales. So we had to make sure that people knew that we were alive, knew that we were coming to market. And because I had waited so long, there were other brands that were filling that space, even though we were one of the first brands to get the kind of press that we were getting about textured hair. And we were one of the first brands that were asked to come into mass retail. I stood back for so long. Now, when I came to market, we weren't in there. It was just with one or two other brands. There were, a couple dozen brands there.
So where else are you sold now besides Target?
So we're in Target, Walmart, Sally Beauty. We've expanded into drug, which I'm thrilled about, CVS, Walgreens, but we're in a lot of Sally's and Targets and Walmarts. Yeah, but we started with Target, and then the following year we picked up Walmart, and then it was just exponential.
I mean, well, if you have those two retailers, it's like everyone wants to have you. You know what I mean? Those are like huge those are huge retailers. And what it does, I mean, what it does is it creates an effect of, like, someone buys it at Target, and then maybe they find themselves at a Sally or at somewhere else, and it's not on the shelf, and then they ask for it, and then they're potentially missing the sale.
So, and with each retailer, it's different. You're speaking to a different consumer. The reason why someone's buying, in Walmart looking for products is going to be different than why they're in Target looking for hair care. A Sally Beauty customer she's focused on something else. While they may all be the same person, we go to different retailers with something different in mind. So I had to figure out how to I can't stand in every aisle and sell the good to you, right? But I still had to make sure that, that on my packaging and in the way that I communicate on social media, that people understood that I was there for them.
So before you were in mass retail, do you remember what your sales were of your product line?
I would probably say, I was maybe six figure but a lot of that, you lose in just all of the lessons that you're learning.
Right.
Thank
you for being so truthful. I appreciate that.
Just because you make, $150,000 a year doesn't mean that that's what you have.
Thank you
And
for
so,
saying that too, because I often reiterate that. Um, I talk about the fact that my company was a seven-figure company, and it was. That does not mean I have seven figures, not even
right.
close. It costs a lot of money to run a
Yeah,
company,
absolutely.
and so you have to like be mindful of that. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that, but
That's
I
the whole
want to
truth.
show the growth. And so can you give me a ballpark of where you're at now?
We're definitely seven figures. Yeah, we're about 5 million this year.
Amazing.
Uh,
Congratulations. Like, think about that because that is huge. That is huge.
it is, right? Right. I mean, we're talking about me. What's funny is when we started, all of my money from the salon was going into the Doux. So it's not, we were putting our money in the shoebox. I opened the salon, saving my own money. When you're a smaller business, especially in the beauty space, there isn't any support from banks, or people do not want to lend you anything because they don't see the vision and they don't really get the concept. So we saved our money to open the salon. The salon money went into the Doux. So I
Did
was
you ever
generating.
raise capital for your product or no?
No, I was generating.
I mean, Maya, like
But from who?
that,
Like,
no, but I'm just saying, like, but I mean, once you got into retail, I don't know if like maybe you had a round of capital or anything, but like I'm saying, I'm asking this because it's a really big fucking deal. Like that
yeah.
you have this $5 million business and you've never raised a dime, and it's a product, and that too is like what you've done is incredible, and you should be so proud of yourself. I mean, honestly, because it costs so much money to have a viable product, and you did it on your own.
Well, what happens at the beginning is that you're really wanting people to invest. You're really hoping that your friends and your family members and people can like throw you something. I had an investor, the one person that helped us open our salon. I had a client that helped me I almost didn't open the salon when we came back to the States. I had a client that believed in what we were doing so much. She was like, let's help you with the furniture. Like that was it. But what happens is you build it yourself, then people believe you. And then everybody wants a
Of course,
piece. And it's kind of like, well, thanks, but
that
where were
ship
you?
has sailed.
Right, right, right. So, I mean, now we're in the growth phase where we are, considering, strategic partners. And I mean, that happens and it needs to happen to get to that, 5 million mark. But I've seen brands who have done it without it. But what happens is as your business grows to that level, now you need infrastructure, and that's where the scaling has to happen. There's no way that my husband and I can, and a team of 2 or 3 people are able to scale at that level. So yeah, it's we're learning that there are levels to this, and even though I didn't have really an end in mind, I have to now, because like it's real it's real money, right?
Yeah. So, what does your team look like now? Because you just said you can't do it alone, and that is something too that is so important to acknowledge as a female founder. So, who's on your team? How does this look?
So my husband handles operations. I am steering the brand. I'm the creative director and the product developer. So I have my hands in everything from the visual side of the brand. All the words that you read are mine. I am the Doux, and I have a social media manager. I do have a sales manager. And I have a strategist that kind of helps us look at the whole umbrella and has a lot more experience in this field to project where the industry is going and kind of help us find our place there, so that we're not as much in the weeds. But as the founder, when the brand really is you and your brainchild, that you have to have the discipline to disconnect
Yep.
from a lot of things that you were doing. So slowly I'm learning to delegate things and to get things out of my head, to build some systems, so that if I'm sick today, or if I'm not able to make it because I have a kid thing, that someone else can continue. Because when you first start, you literally are doing everything.
Yep. Yep. Thank you for acknowledging that. You made a comment early on in the conversation that you talked about how because you had like a delay to mass retail, you were not the only one, and even though you were like the first one to be approached. So what do you do now to get people to switch? Like how, you know what I mean? Like if there are people who are using those other brands that were at mass retail before you, what's your strategy? Like how do you market to new people?
I really just try to stay authentic and authentic to myself, to really um, make myself the point of difference. I think that people don't necessarily need to be told what to do. They are looking for the truth. And so I know that my story, there are wonderful brands out there that all deserve to be there because I know what it takes to get to that shelf. But I think with the Doux, we have a point of difference because I'm actually, a practicing hairstylist. There's a lot of knowledge and experience that I bring to the table. And fortunately, the consumer is still, sitting down in salon seats. So the way that we speak to people has a lot to do with the place that we're coming from. It's kind of like Jingle Bells. Like it's a song we all know, we all sing it around Christmas time, but you want to hear Elvis sing it, you want to hear Marilyn Monroe sing it, you want to hear Usher sing it. There's a rap Jingle Bells. It's the same song, right? But we all want to hear a different version. So I really see natural hair care or textured hair care brands kind of like churches. You will connect with the brand that speaks your language, that resonates the most with you. The advantage I feel that we have at the Doux is that we really are talking about facts. Our consumer has tried everything. They've done everything on YouTube. They've bought all the things, and they really are just trying to figure out what is actually going to produce results. And so I think that's the edge that we have as a brand, because I'm painstakingly honest. I've had my team tell me, like, you're doing way too much myth busting. You just need to sell it and make sure they get it and promote. But to me, if you don't get why you're doing something, eventually you'll be disenchanted because you think the problem is you. So I like to educate a lot. I like to talk to them a lot and make sure that my consumer knows that I know their pain, I know their pain points, and I know the conversations that they're having about their hair because I'm overhearing them in the salon.
And I agree wholeheartedly with you. You said you listened to Dear Founder, so you probably know that I would say that. And I know it's hard when you have your team telling you to promote, but don't lose sight of that, because what you're doing in terms of the education and sympathizing with the pain points of your client is really what is getting people to convert. I mean, that's why people buy, right? And you know that. And so don't lose sight of that.
Right. I mean, we know when we're being sold something.
Yes, 100. Oh my God, 100% without a doubt. What's been the biggest challenge along the way?
It is for me personally, it is kind of disconnecting from the business side of it. I'm an artist that happens to do hair. So the creative part of me, the innovative side of me is not always in agreement with what works on paper. So I've had to take a lot of ownership of my thoughts and feelings and be direct with my team. Like, I get that, financially this makes sense, or fiscally this makes sense, but this is what we really need to do because my consumer needs this. So for me, it's really been setting a lot of boundaries and advocating for myself as a creative in this really what has now become a very corporate space.
Yeah.
And so that for me, that has been the biggest challenge is growing, as founders, we grow individually while we're taking this journey. And so we're evolving and we're changing and we're growing up a little bit and learning how to speak up for ourselves and advocate for our consumer. And as the business grows, now you're faced with a bunch of people who may or may not know or care about what it is that you do. And you have to still translate those needs to people who aren't necessarily interested in what you're doing. So it is, more money, more problems. Like the more that you're
Yeah.
successful, now you have to stand up for what you really believe in. And that begins, I feel like, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like it starts to matter less and less the higher up you
Yep.
go.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so when you're small, you're more nimble and you can attend to every little jot and tittle of what people need and what they think. When you get bigger, you just don't have the time and the
No.
bandwidth
It's
anymore.
it's a bandwidth issue for
Yeah,
sure. And it's like you have to decide what you're going to give up and what needs your attention. And I think that that's one of the hardest parts as a founder
yeah.
as well.
And
And I
just
mean,
to be
that's
a person, like I'm still a human being growing and learning myself. And
when you
so,
also have to have a life
yeah,
outside of your
yeah,
company, right? I
absolutely,
mean, your
absolutely.
family, like you can't just only be doing the do every single minute of every single
Right.
day. And
But
it's
because you
tough.
love the do, it is kind of part of every conversation. And you go on vacation and you're having all these ideas and you have all these breakthrough ideas at the
Yep.
worst time. So yeah, to me, it's learning now to set some boundaries between myself and the brand. And realize that, at some point, this isn't going to be the first thing on my mind. What's behind the do, what's after the do that I can, hold on to, because it's almost like the brand grows and you become a bit of an empty nester. I mean, if you decide to sell or if you, move on to something else. So it's like this, it's like a wedding. Like once you have the wedding, you lose like the hysteria and all the things that you're thinking about. And there's kind of like a depression that happens after. So
Uh-huh.
in my mind, I'm preparing myself for what's next.
What is next? What do you hope is next? And you might not know, but what do you if you could look into a crystal ball and be like, this is an ideal situation, what do you hope happens with the do?
I'm still kind of in the weeds to the degree that I really still can't see my way out of it. I feel like we have so much to do. But I think at this stage also you start to think about legacy, and if the brand, it happens if the brand is no longer as popular as it is now, or something changes, like anything can happen. What do we want to leave behind? So I'm not as much thinking about what the do will do, but how the do changes the industry that I know as textured hair care. And so that's really what I'm focused on right now is will people see their hair differently? Will they make different choices because of what we shared with them? Will they have I'm hoping that my consumer has a higher standard of what's on the shelf, that they have higher expectations, not just for me, but for every brand. And so, we're already starting to change the way that people see hair care, because, we're not promoting 5 products. We're, 5 product layering. For instance, we have products that can be used on their own, which is kind of, it's different because the idea is to sell as much as you can.
Right.
So changing the way that people see hair care, is really what I want to leave behind, because I know that the products themselves or the brand itself, it the legacy of it is always kind of unknown. How far it goes, how far it resonates is always really unknown.
What are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of the fact that people see their hair differently because of our influence. I love to see the way that I believe the do has changed the way people see themselves, what they think their hair's limitations are. They're finding through our education and our products that their hair can do X, Y, and Z, that they've just been taught something different. So I'm really the most proud of the fact that people have not only tried their products, but heard from me, tried our products, but heard from me individually. And they have a different idea of what their beauty means. They see themselves as beautiful, and unique, and they're not beating themselves up, thinking that there's something wrong with them when a product doesn't perform to their expectations. I think especially with women of color, we come into this world with a real strange idea of what pretty is. And if we're able, are we able to meet a beauty standard? And so for my consumer to see that is obtainable for them is really what I'm the most proud of.
I love that answer because it is about your consumer and not about you. And that shows just how dedicated you are to your community and to your customer and how you love what you do because it impacts other people. And so I just thank you for that because it was just so honest and it speaks to why you're successful. I mean, really and
Thank you.
truly, you know.
Thank you.
Do you still do hair?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not behind the chair. Like I don't have a book, but I still have like my favorite OG clients and I still develop. So there's a season every year that I'm working out all of the products that will launch either the following year or the year after. So now I'm just focused 100% on developing, but that's how I started the
Right.
brand. So everything that I'm making, I'm using on that same group of clients. So the capacity, the way that I do hair is different, but I'll be that old lady in the beauty shop, you know, in the back doing hair forever. I love my industry so much. I would be heartbroken if I had to leave it. That was the agreement when I went into retail, is that I could still be who I was as an artist and as a hairstylist, no matter what this brand did. And I intend to hold true to that.
Is your husband retired from the military?
He's yes, he was in 13 years. But yes.
Please thank him for serving.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you my last question. And my last question is the same question that I ask everyone. And that is 3 actionable tips that you would tell a female founder who's getting started.
To number one, I know this sounds cliche, but always remember why you started. Because that'll be the thing that will carry you through when there's no money, when there's no support, when everyone in your office walks out. The reason that you started is really what will carry you through.
It's not cliche, it's the truth.
It is. If you forget why you started, it's a wrap, because other people's agendas and priorities will take over yours. I would also say learn to build some systems in your business so that if you get hit by a bus, somebody can keep going, and they can, you know, adopt the things that are important to you. So finding your brand DNA and making sure that other people are able to carry that out is huge. And I would also say be gentle with yourself. Give yourself grace, because you, as your brand is growing, we have a tendency to completely abandon our own personal growth. And so it's not always, I get asked a lot, should you, how do you balance, your life and
There's no
for me,
balance.
it's not balance. There's no balance. Okay. Not a thing, right? It really is a matter of setting priorities. You can't do it all. You can have it all, but you can't do it all at the same time. So giving yourself grace, being gentle with yourself really it's allowed me to remind myself constantly that I'm still a human being and I still have the right to grow individually and make mistakes as a person. And that my personal growth it doesn't have to be connected to my business's growth. Because I experienced a season in the last year where my business like took off and I still felt like I was 18. Like, I'm 43 this year.
Me too.
And there's a part of you though, as a founder, if you don't know the corporate side of things, you really feel like a kid, right?
Yes.
So you're watching your business grow up, and I've had to remind myself daily that just because my business is growing doesn't mean that I have to personally accelerate at the same rate. I can still be me and appreciate how big the Doux is getting, and not feel like we have to be doing this at the same time.
Maya Smith, founder of the Doux, thank you so much for this
Thank
incredible
you.
conversation. I am so proud of you. I know we just met today, but you have really built something amazing. And I hope you take a second to like pause and say, you know what? I really did build something fucking amazing, because you did. And you are, and you still are. So thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. I so appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.